Hey guys, whether you have a garden or you just have a kitchen where you go through a lot of kitchen scraps, I'm going to show you how to make a super simple composter that has heat and purification in it. It has an automatic filter so you won't have to worry about smells or any odors, and also this will take a lot of your kitchen scraps and turn it into garden gold, that perfect type of soil additive that will help your house plants, your outdoor garden, ornamental plants, or your vegetable garden. This is super simple to do. I've got one in my kitchen right now under the kitchen sink, and I'm going to show you how to make one from scrap using a 5-gallon bucket. You're not limited to a 5-gallon bucket. You can use any size buckets you want as long as they can nest in each other. So this is a really easy thing to build, and it takes something that you would normally throw into trash into something you can use for a very positive reason and help it recycle and keep it out of landfills. So if you're into gardening, you've probably seen these under the kitchen sink composters, and they're quite expensive. They can range anywhere from $400 to $500. But if you don't want to go to all the trouble in building it yourself and you have the means to buy one, I'll put a link in the description so you can get one. But remember, their capacity is not going to be maybe just half of this 5-gallon bucket. But if you're an individual or just a couple and you don't go through a huge amount of kitchen scraps, then that might just be the right thing for you. But I'm going to show you something that you could use for a family of 3 or 4 going through a lot of kitchen scraps during the week. You can compost them. In less than 30 days, you can turn something that you would normally throw into the trash into garden gold. So the first thing you're going to need is 2 5-gallon buckets, and you can go down to the smaller size buckets at Lowe's and Home Depot. They sell these in a 3-gallon size, and you could even go smaller depending on your own needs. But I'm going with this because we go through quite a bit of garden scraps in our kitchen. We eat a lot of vegetables. So again, the first thing you're going to need is 2 plastic containers, and you need to have at least 1 lid that can completely seal to keep out any or prevent any fruit flies from coming out. So there's a simple way to take care of that too, but the main point I'm trying to get across is container size. If you have the space under your sink, I would go with 5 gallons. So the first thing we're going to do is set up our filtration system. You could do something like this, a 2-inch piece of PVC. You're going to need to make sure that you mark it around the top so you can cut out the exact right size. You can do that with a hole saw, which is what I'm going to do, or you could do it with a razor blade. It's a little bit more tricky than that, so you just need to put a lot of pressure on it and cut very slowly so you can get exactly the right size. I'm going to opt for this particular size right here, but you can get these in short lengths, so you don't have to buy the 10-foot size. You can just go into your local hardware store and get a small piece like this. But this is the filtration item that's going to take away any smells that might build up inside the pot, and it's really simple to build. And there's 2 different items you can use inside of this, but 2 different ways that it's going to be used, so I'll talk about that next. Now there's 2 very common things known to help with odors, and a lot of times you'll put some baking soda in your fridge to cut down on any odors that might be inside your fridge. So you can either use baking soda, or in my case I'm going to use charcoal, and you need to break it up small enough. This charcoal is actually sold by the bag, and I'll give you a glimpse of that bag. You can buy it in a store. You'll make sure there's no chemicals added to it. It just needs to be pure charcoal with no additives. So you don't have to buy a bag this size. You can get a smaller bag, but usually you can find this at Walmart, most of your big box stores, in the grilling section. And this is just lump charcoal with no additives. So just remember, this is a 20-pound bag, but you don't need one that big because we're just using a very small amount of it. I'll talk next about how you can use the baking soda if you don't want to go with the charcoal option. But I think this is a better option because it's going to really limit the odors coming out of the bucket. Now the first thing we want to do is we want to mark exactly where the center of the top is around the top of your lid. We'll just mark that very carefully to make sure that we get the perfect diameter hole. So, and that's what we're going to use. We're using this 1.5 inch PVC. Now, one thing I'm going to tell you that I would only have it coming out maybe just a couple of inches out of the top, because again, if you're under your kitchen sink, you're going to have a limited amount of height there, so I wouldn't do the full length. Again, you can purchase these at your local hardware store for very little as compared to buying the entire 10-foot length. So just get one of these shorter ones. This has been uncut. I'm going to measure the height I want it to be, which is, like I said, about 2 or 3 inches above the top of the bucket. And then I'm going to take a very oversized set of PVC cutters, and this is just one I had around the shop because I'm always working with PVC with irrigation systems and things like that. So you can use PVC, you can use a hacksaw, you could use any type of cutting blade, you could use a pruning blade, but this makes a nice clean cut on your PVC. Now on this PVC, as I mentioned, you can either use baking soda or you can use the charcoal. I'm opting to use charcoal because I think it's better at eliminating any possible odors. You don't want something that has a very strong odor from under your sink, because every time you go to put new scraps and things like that, eggshells, whatever, you're going to get a whiff of this. So you want to make this is a key component to making this a little bit more tolerable, since you might have this in your kitchen. Now, this is optional. If you're going to put this in your garage and you're not so worried about odors, and just on the way out to your trash cans you dump your kitchen scraps in this, then you're fine. But the two ways I'm going to recommend using this is, if you do opt for the charcoal, you're going to need a cap on each end of it, but don't, a PVC cap, but don't glue it. Just put it where you can easily put it on and remove it, top and bottom, and that way you can rinse this out, or you can add some more charcoal to it. If you're opting to go with the baking soda, you're going to only do it in a very specific way. On the baking soda, put your cap on and then mark about every ½ inch across the top of it there and drill some larger size holes. Now this is going to be the top, towards the top of your bucket. This is going to allow for to do it work, but make sure that it's inside of your lid on your bucket, because we want this to absorb any possible odors using the baking soda, but at the same time we don't want any of the moisture from any of the things we're adding to the bucket. So just remember, those holes at the top here are going to be for absorbing odors, same way it works in your fridge. So I'm not going that route. I'm going to put small holes all the way down to the bottom with my drill, and in that way the charcoal can absorb. At the very bottom, I'm going to use my cap, and just in case any moisture gets in there, it'll drain right out the center of the bottom of the cap. So this is going to be the bottom, and of course at the top you're going to have holes running, they're about 1/4 inch in size. You're going to have them running all the way up, about every ½ inch apart. So this way it acts as a natural filter inside of there, and if the charcoal gets too wet or you want to change it out, it's really easy to do. When these caps just come off, you can dump it and then refill it with charcoal. You'll need to break up the charcoal a little bit, maybe inside of a bag, and make it a little bit smaller so it fits in here easier, because some of those lump charcoal may be a little bit large for the ends here. So just remember, we're not crushing them down to a powder. We just want to make them easier to fit in here so they can absorb those odors that might be created from our composting system. Now I've got one of these step bits. It makes it really easy to drill into PVC, but you can use a standard bit, but I find these work really good. I'll put a link in the description of these, but they really go through PVC quite easily. We're going to make the holes roughly a little bit smaller than 1/4 inch, and we just want to do that because we don't want any of the charcoal inside of here coming out. So as I said, we're going to do about every inch. Run down the side, clean them off as you go, and just put them about every inch across and every inch down, so you have a nice filtration system with the charcoal. Now once you've drilled all your holes, you want to clean out inside and outside. You don't want any of this plastics to be inside of the interior or exterior. So just wipe it down really good. And if you have to, you can rinse it out with a hose pipe and get any small debris there. But you'll have a nice homemade filter here, and the holes are small enough where you won't have charcoal just falling out into your composting items. So this just makes it a lot easier to eliminate some of those smells. Now I'm going to show you how to install it inside the bucket. Now I'm going to use this hole saw, but like I said earlier, you could use a razor blade. You just want to cut a perfectly round hole there. When you do use a hole saw, you want to go clockwise to make a small mark around there, and then reverse your drill and then go the opposite way, because a lot of times it will not catch, or sometimes it has a bad habit of making jagged edges and catching. So when you go to cut it the rest of the way through, reverse your hole saw and it'll give you a cleaner cut. But we just want to make it a tight a fit as possible to keep any odors from coming out. Now I just wanted you to be able to see this a little bit better. I think this would fit under most people's kitchen sinks. If you have limited space under there, you could go down to, like I said, a 3-gallon bucket size, or even Tupperware containers. But for me, the amount of kitchen waste we go through, this is the perfect size, and it's what I have right now as far as a 5-gallon bucket. Now heat makes this work even better. The expensive one you find online does have a heat component to it, and what I'm using is a seed starting tray, very low wattage, and we're going to also use this to create very gentle heat to allow this to work even better. So This is optional, but I think it just improves the overall design of it. Of course, the filtration is optional, as I said earlier. If you have this in a garage or somewhere where the smell doesn't matter, then you don't even have to do this part. But I'm doing this under the kitchen sink, so when I go with scraps, I don't run it down the drain or through the garbage disposal or into the trash. I want to put it in here. Eggshells, any type of, sometimes I put cardboard in there if it doesn't have any plastics or printing on it. So any type of food scraps can go in here, but not meats, only things like vegetables, lettuces, leftover things like that. You want to make sure no meats, no plastics or anything like this, because we want to turn this into what I refer to as garden gold. Now this naturally is going to have liquids at the base of it, and there's a couple ways you can handle that. You can create, basically you're going to nest one bucket inside of the other, and you're going to drill holes in the bottom of this bucket so it drains into your secondary bucket. You don't want this all dripping under your kitchen sink under there, because it's going to make a huge mess. So make sure these have a really good fit, and that will also prevent any smells from coming out. But I'm not opting to do this time, but you can buy small plastic spigots and put it at the very base of your outer bucket, and then that way you can turn it on, fill up a glass, and go water some interior houseplants. I'm using this for my outdoor garden, so once it's created it, I take both buckets out to the garden and I use it out there. I put the liquid that forms in here, I put it into a hose-end sprayer where I can overspray the garden, and the solids that is created, I use that to dump around each new plant. So we're at the end of the season now, but I'll be doing this all winter long and collecting this so that when spring begins next year, I'll have a solid 1 to 2 fully full 5-gallon buckets of this garden gold. So remember that if you want to do this for optional houseplants, you can put a spigot there. I'll put a link in the description. They come in either plastic or metal. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to load the filtration system with my charcoal. Make sure that it's smaller. You're going to do this all the way to the probably around just above the rim of the bucket, and this will help with odors. You can crush it even smaller than this, but the great thing about these larger pieces, you don't have to worry about it coming out. Yes, liquid may get on these, but it's not going to hurt it at all. Some people consume this when they either had food poisoning or they've ate something that had gone bad. So this is often found in emergency rooms, so it's perfectly safe if it gets on the finished product and it goes out to the garden. So charcoal is a very safe product. A lot of times we add it to our garden to supercharge the garden. So you just put that until it's completely filled, and that's going to help with odors. I would say you go right at the, as I said just a second ago, right to the top of the bucket to allow a little bit of airflow coming out. Once you get it to the top, you're going to put the cap on. Next, I'll show you how to generate heat inside this bucket very simply. Now, as I talked about earlier, these seed heating mats are great for creating just very gentle heat. This is a 20-watt seed heating mat. You can put it on a timer. It has a standard plug with it, so you could just run it half the day, so you'd be using very low wattage. But what we want to do is we want to put this around the outer area of our interior bucket, and we may have to tape it in place, but again, we're just going to put that there, and it's going to be a little bit of a tight fit. We just put it down in there, push it all the way down, and so that way our compost is getting very gentle heat. As I said earlier, you don't have to run this 24 hours a day. Just put it on an on and off timer. If you don't have a plug anywhere under your sink, you could put this somewhere else. You can put it out in a garage or anything like that. So you're doing two things with this system here, which is very similar to the very expensive one I've talked about. You're filtering, you're also making sure there's just a little bit of gentle heat. So sometimes in the wintertime, it may be a little bit cool under your sink, so the microbes and the microbial life that will be inside of the bucket will stay nice and warm, not hot, but it will be able to produce much quicker, replicate themselves, and break this down into garden gold. So you've done two things here, and I'm going to tell you about how you layer this inside of there. But I'd say less than 30 days you can transform garden waste. And also, I want to make sure I mention this, the interior bucket has a lot of very small holes on it. We don't want this to be soupy wet. We want it to be like a wrung out sponge. So just remember that you're trying to create this where it will break down those garden waste items and sometimes kitchen waste items, eggshells, everything else that I mentioned before, and all the stuff you would normally throw away in the trash from your garden. You now can turn it into this right here, what I keep said 3 or 4 times, garden gold. Now the trick to making this work is to layer, and layering just means you're putting in browns with your scraps, and you're going to do that back and forth. You might put 2 inches of your browns, which can be shredded cardboard. I always recommend using a paper shredder, run them through there, make sure there's no plastics and minimal ink on it. Also, you could use just standard paper where you ran it through a paper shredder, even though it may be white paper, it's just been bleached for that purpose. So you got browns, then you got your kitchen scraps, and then just repeat that as high as you go. And then once a week, you might take the bucket and just stir it with a paint stick or a large ladle or something like that, where it's, you know, helping it break down. So you can't just leave it in the layers. You have to do a little bit of stirring after about 1 week. Also, you want to make sure that you seal it each time, because I said you don't want that smell if this is under your sink. This is going to help with the smell. The heating element we have in there, the seed heating mat, is going to make a huge difference too. That speeds the entire process up. So you have kind of matching what the $300 or $400 or more system does. This creates heat. You're going to manually stir it. And it also has a very nice filtration system, so you don't have to worry about smelling something really foul in the kitchen. Now, usually after I create a video, there's either something I forgot or something that I didn't say clearly. So I created a very detailed multi-page PDF. And if you're a member of the Patreon, you can look at it, download it. It's easy to read and it has a lot more detail than I'm giving here, or else this would be an hour-long video. So for a few dollars, if you're not in the Patreon paid member section, you can get it downloaded as well. But if you are a paid member, you can download it free, as well as some of the other PDFs I have there that are for Patreon members at no charge. And then everybody else is just a few dollar charge. So take a look at the Patreon, the link is down below. But this is one of those things that I've used all the time in the kitchen. It's really great, and it cost me very little to make it, maybe less than $10 to put all this together, compared to the $300 or $400 system. And I've even seen them over $500 in some brands. But if you don't want to go to all the trouble of making it, I'll link one of these down below. I'll also link some of the products that I've used here, such as a step drill bit down below if you don't already have it. That makes it super easy to drill into PVC. So guys, if you do have any specific questions about this particular video, I hope you'll become a public subscriber first. I usually put those questions to the front of the line. I can filter it in the management page system where I can see subscribers' questions before anybody else. I really would appreciate it if you do that. It helps the channel grow, and it makes me more encouraged to create more and unique videos. Guys, I really appreciate you watching. Have a great day.